Good evening, good evening, good evening, everyone. Good evening, good evening, good evening to our National Baptist Convention USA Incorporated family. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Michael Miner, and I am the National Director of the National Baptist Convention USA Incorporated Hope Health Ministry, and I am pleased to be your moderator, your MC, your agenda guide for this evening. Look, let's take an opportunity now to share for those that are on social media. Let's share on our Facebook family. Those that would like to have an opportunity to win for my drawing this evening, we want you to join us on Zoom. And we thank all of you that join us on Facebook, Zoom, and YouTube. We're glad to have you on this evening. All right. So this is our ongoing series, TempleCare Matters. And you know how we do this thing. We begin by acknowledging our awesome national leadership, beginning with our president, Dr. Jerry Young, our general secretary, Dr. Alvin Edwards, the chair of our federal faith-based development initiative, Dr. Alvin Love, and of course, to all of our board of directors and churches, associations of our National Baptist Convention USA Incorporated, all 31,000 churches. We greet you tonight. Now, look, I know all of you are still rejoicing over an inspirational, informative Sunday School Publishing Board Annual Educators Conference last week. Wow, in person in Nashville, over 1,000 people registered. What a blessed time. We thank God for allowing us to have another session as we have been able to endure the pandemic. Okay. Tonight's webinar. In this evening's TempleCare Matters webinar, we'll share about December's suggested health services. Well, we'll give a recap of World AIDS Day, which was on December 1st, National Drunk and Drug Driving Prevention, National Influenza Vaccination Week, which is this week. We'll have a special panel. Yes, a special panel tonight that will give us a recap of World HIV AIDS Day. We're the latest from Let's Move National Baptist and do our monthly drawing. And finally, we'll provide a mental health first aid training update. As always, we remind you this evening's webinar is supported by funding from the National Institutes of Health, All of Us Research Program. Yes, yes, yes. We want you all to join our NBCUSA team in becoming one in a million and one of our nation's most robust research studies. Now look, to learn more, you may go to joinallofus.org/NBCUSA. Again, that's joinallofus.org/NBCUSA. And to make sure you're on the right page, it's the page that has a picture of Sister Miner and I. Why don't you go out there today and join? You'll make a difference. And as a person that I former DJ, radio DJ in the area said so many years ago, and you'll be glad you did. All right. This webinar, believe it or not, is the 9th of our series of First Tuesday TempleCare Matters webinars. They've evolved into not just virtual events on Zoom, but we're hearing that some of you all have hybrid events where you're in person, where you're showing the some on live and some later, and you're sharing your health ministry. Wonderful. We love how it's drilling down to our local congregation. Well, in each session, we're trying to delve deeper into the 7 pillars of TempleCare Matters. All right. Now, you know, we got to take an opportunity. We want to be able to say something about our, COVID-19. Now, I know we moved from a pandemic to an endemic, and we're hopefully getting very close to a no-demic. But we're somewhere between pandemic and no-demic. Well, as we get ready for our third winter holiday season with COVID-19, we're tired of hearing about the pandemic. Yes, we would much rather focus on the truly important things in our lives, gathering with loved ones, taking time to relax and recharge, and think about all the things we want to make happen in the new year. But getting sick can put a stop to those plans and gatherings indoors during the cold winter months. It helps COVID-19, along with RSV, flu, and the common cold to spread more easily. COVID-19 continues to spread and evolve across the world around us. If you are a loved one is over age 50, if you're over age 50, the chance of having severe disease and need to visit the hospital is much higher. On the screen here, we got the different symptoms, and we posted this on our National Baptist Convention Facebook page between COVID, flu, common cold, and RSV. So we encourage everyone to stay on track with their COVID-19 booster series, wear a mask when in high-risk environments, even if it's not COVID, could be the flu. And of course, take the seasonal flu vaccination. Well, speaking of the flu vaccination, which I have already taken you all, and I still want y'all to know I got 5 fingers on each hand. This is National Influenza Vaccination Week. All right, National Influenza Vaccination Week, Flu Week, is a critical opportunity to remind everyone 6 months and older that there is still time to protect yourselves and your loved ones from the flu this season by getting your annual flu vaccine if you're not already. Currently, flu activity is elevated across the country. So this week, we'll serve to remind everyone that there is still time to benefit from the first and most important action in preventing flu illness and potentially serious flu complication. Get a flu vaccine today. Oh, somebody didn't hear me. Get a flu vaccine today. Amen. Of course, again, a shout out to our Facebook. Those who watch from Facebook, we're asking you to give us your state convention and your state convention president for all those that are watching on Facebook and YouTube. Let's give a shout out tonight to our state conventions and our state convention presidents. All right, y'all, as always, there's always an exciting panel. There's always an exciting discussion for our TempleCare Matters. And tonight's no exception. Okay, we have tonight 2 awesome panelists. Yes. And we have, we have 2 awesome panelists, and we have a great moderator on tonight. And we know that you're certainly going to be blessed by what we have. The reason you see me pausing here, it looks like we're going to have 1 great panelist and 1 awesome moderator. There we go. One will be joining us shortly. Okay, here we go. So let me introduce who we have. All right, tonight, we begin with a recap of our HIV/AIDS Day, which is December 1st. Okay? All right, our first panelist is Dr. Tamara Rose. She's the founder of and owner of Sacral Soul Divine Feminine Womb Wellness. And we are looking forward to hearing what she has to say on this evening. Good evening, Dr. Rose.
Good evening. Thank you so much for allowing me to join you all tonight. I look forward to this discussion.
Wonderful, wonderful. Our second panelist will be Dr. Tanya Bailey, and we'll highlight her when she joins in. And she's a pastor of Hand of God Ministries. Oh, wow. See, you know something there, Dr. Rose. We bring her name up, and there she is. Dr. Bailey joins us. So our second panelist is Dr. Tanya Bailey. Dr. Bailey is the pastor of Hand of God Ministries, Associate Dean of DEI and Community Engagement at Oakland University, William Beaumont Medical School, and owner of TCB and Consulting LLC. Good evening, Dr. Bailey.
God bless you. Glad to be here.
All right. And of course, we have a very dynamic moderator who's going to lead this panel discussion, our very own head of our mental health ministry, part of H.O.P.E, is Sister Bettina Campbell. Well, we now turn over this section of our webinar to our panel moderator, Sister Bettina Campbell. Raise your hand, Sister Bettina.
Thank you, Pastor. Good evening, everyone. As you've already been welcomed, and so tonight we're going to be talking about HIV/AIDS. Now, World AIDS Day, which was December 1st, was created in 1988 in order to close the gap and disparities that limit HIV testing, prevention, and access to care. this day also serves as a call to action for us to get more involved, for us to go out and get tested and to know our status, and then to help to eliminate some of the stigma and the discrimination that surrounds this disease, or this virus, I should say. The title of this year's World AIDS Day was Equalize. And what it implies is that there is a great disparity in who is being infected and why. And so what we are trying to do now is to close that gap, and especially looking at African-American women. We want to make sure that we are providing them with the information and the knowledge that they need. And of course, we also know that the numbers are always high in the LGBTQI community. And so again, the idea is to stop siloing and to come together and work together and realize that it's behaviors that are causing us to be infected. And so we have a great panel here today. And I'm just going to share just a little bit more about who they are, and so that you'll understand the depth and breadth of experience that they bring to this issue. In 2014, as part of the University of Michigan Flint's new general education program, Dr. Bailey developed a first ever course for the institution that focused on HIV and AIDS. Dr. Bailey's first year experience course, entitled Let's Talk About Sex and HIV/AIDS, emphasized the link between college life and survival skills. It focused on the topics of human immunodeficiency virus and the acquired immunodeficiency virus. So it focused on HIV and AIDS. And to that end, the course design combines the study skills, personal development, and introduction to higher education, and the link between them, between life skills and the critical, not only academic success, but it's for life itself. It includes the preventing the HIV transmission and other topics that might not have had an opportunity to discuss in school. Dr. Bailey's course remains one of the most sought after courses that students register for each and every semester. And I can personally attest that it's quite a course, and those young people really enjoy it and they get a lot out of it. And they say not only, again, does it help them to prepare to prevent them from becoming HIV positive, but it also helps them with life skills in general. Dr. Tamara Rose has been in this field for over 30 years. She's worked all over the country and empowering individuals and with information, tools, and skills and resources to make safer decisions that would help to reduce their potential exposure. She served as a lead author for the country's first faith-based HIV manual that was endorsed by the Department of the Health and Human Services and the National Coalition of Pastor Spouses. And she's also developed an intervention called Your Blessed Health, which has trained over 90 churches across 9 denominations. And she was also the trainer in this program. Dr. Tamara Rose is an author of 9 books, several magazine articles, and has appeared on several radio and television shows. And she's helped create and supervise a group of amazing young peer educators. So again, you see that they have a wealth of information and knowledge about this topic. And so it's going to be more of a discussion than a panel presentation. So what I'm going to do is throwing out a question to start with, and then you ladies take it from there. And my question is, I've talked about HIV/AIDS and why the government thinks that it's important. So I would like to know, from your perspective, why is it important that you think that we need to be talking about this topic, and tonight of all nights? And then Dr. Bailey, I'd also like for you to talk about why you think the church should be talking about this topic. So Dr. Tamara, would you start us off, please?
Yes, thank you for that amazing introduction. I feel like this is definitely a conversation that we must be having among the Black community as well as in faith communities for a number of reasons. And I know that Dr. Bailey is going to really bring it home when we talk about the faith community, but I just want to touch on that a little bit, simply because historically, when we think about the church, the Black church, that's where we go as Black people when we are sick, when we are in need of healing, when we are in need of prayer, when we are in need of love, when we are in need, period. We turn to the church, we turn to our faith leaders, and our faith leaders need to be well equipped with the information in order to serve as that safe space, you see, for their congregation. So that's one thing. But then when we talk about the Black community in general, you know, we have a historical tendency, or trauma, shall I say, to sweep things under the rug, and that has gotten us nowhere but where we are today, you see. And so being able to have these conversations about sexuality, about HIV, and how it's impacting us disproportionately is so important. And we need to not be afraid to have these conversations and to be these safe spaces, because we're dying. Black women are disproportionately impacted for a multitude of reasons, and we have to be able to understand what that looks like and how that continues to change our lineage and our legacies. And if we don't have these conversations, we'll continue to die. And it's so unfortunate, because I've been in this field, like Bettina said, for over 30 years. And while we keep having these same conversations about HIV, we have to talk about how HIV is relevant to us as Black folk, how HIV is relevant to me as a Black woman, how HIV is relevant to me as a faith leader, how HIV is relevant to me as a family member. And if we don't have that conversation, then we don't see the problem. We don't see the need to address it. And I think that's really one of the major issues in terms of transmission and the continued risk that we experience. And so when Bettina asked me to speak about this panel, I told her, I said, listen, I don't want to do a conversation on what HIV is. That's important to know what the letters stand for. That's great. And I think that if there's a time and place for that, clearly we've been doing that for 30 years and nothing has changed. I want to talk about how this impacts us as Black women, Black people, people of faith, people of color, and what we can do about it to reduce our risk for becoming infected. And also, if we are, individuals who are impacted, are infected and affected with HIV, how do we live a quality of life within the spectrum of this illness, right? How do we support folk? And so that's the conversation that I was interested in having. And so, yes, as Black people, we need to not be ashamed to have these conversations. We need to look at that legacy of trauma that has plagued our generations and begin to stare it in the face.
Where is the amen button? That's what I'm talking about. Yes, Dr. Tamara, that is exactly right. Hosea, just biblically, Hosea 4:6 clearly states that our people perish or really are destroyed because of a lack of knowledge. And so, Bettina, when you start asking, why is this important? It's because we are destroying ourselves. Because we're not talking about it, we're destroying our families, we're destroying our communities. And without families and without communities, the church is empty, okay? And the reality is that sex and sexuality is a part of the people that come to church, right? It's not something that we just not doing. How are we emerging if there's no one kind of producing and being reproductive? And so I think the conversation is so relevant. Dr. Tamara has hit on a lot of key points, that I think we often sweep under the rug, as she said, and don't have the serious conversation. I'm very proud of this organization for bringing this to the forefront always and making sure, right, that through across this denomination and many others, that the awareness is there. As a pastor, I believe that it is important for spiritual leaders to open up, not just the pulpit, but the side door, the back door, the gymnasium, the Sunday school doors, and all the windows, in order for us to have serious conversations about our health as well as about our wealth. It does us no good to be very spiritually minded and then we're no earthly good. It does us no good to have safe conversations without real action behind why that conversation is needed. And so when we talk about HIV and AIDS, we know that there are a lot of African Americans, particularly in the Black church, that are dying, that are being destroyed because they don't have the awareness and because they don't feel safe. And as pastors and leaders, we're not always thinking about the importance of us being real, telling our stories. Many pastors have had children out of wedlock. Many church leaders have not always done it right. Come on, somebody say amen. Create your own amen button. And so it's important for us to be real. And this is out there. Our role as the body of Christ is to reconcile the world back to Christ. That's our role. And so because that is a part of our government calling from on high, we have to do that by being honest, by being open, providing the information and also the resources so that we all can come up together exactly the way Christ intended. And so this is important. It's actually critical to our success. And when we don't have the conversation, then we're actually destroying ourselves.
One of the things that I've found is when we're having that conversation, it's important that we call it what it is. We have a lot of cutesy names for our reproductive system. And I'm gonna give a little disclaimer here. I am not intending to offend anyone with our language tonight, but it's very important that we use the correct anatomical names for our reproductive system, because when we don't, we create barriers to care. When we don't, our children don't really know what we're talking about and don't make the connection. And over the course of eon, Black women or women's period sexual reproductive parts have names that have not been very nice. And because of those names, they tend to make us feel dirty, unclean, and disconnected from the very parts of our bodies that we should be protecting. And so I want to throw that out there to you, Dr. Campbell, Dr. Rose, and find out from you just what you think or how do you think we can go about educating people on the importance of having real conversations with real dialogue.
Yeah, it's definitely important to make sure that we are called a thing. We call an eye an eye, so we need to be able to call our reproductive systems the parts that they are, because as just like what you said, Bettina, when we fail to honor our temple, right, our body, we are more likely to put it at risk because we create this disassociation with our body. Like it's this thing that's not a part of who we are. And because it's not a part of who we are, we could really care less about how we treat it and how we take care of it. And when we do that, we put ourselves at risk because like you said, a lot of times we're like, well, down there, well, what is down there? There's a lot of stuff down there, a lot of parts down there. So we need to be very specific, especially like you said, when we're speaking with our physician, because when a lot of times physicians are not culturally competent. They don't demonstrate cultural humility. They don't understand our jargon and our vernacular. So if we go in there saying some terminology that we've heard on TV or some cutesy name that we call our body part, they're looking at us like, what are you talking about? In addition to the fact that we need to educate them too, because they just have a disconnect with sexuality too. But that's another conversation. But we still need to be able to say the correct body part, the anatomical body part, because we miss a mark for treatment. But also, like you said, when we teach our children the incorrect terminology or these cutesy names, because we're uncomfortable, right, with the name itself, we put them at risk and we create this culture of silence. I had a particular situation when I was doing social work in the schools in Michigan. This kindergartner was coming to school telling the teacher daddy was doing something to her muffin, right? And to not make it very graphic, I'll just say, long story short, is that because the baby was saying muffin, she wasn't saying her correct anatomical part. They missed an opportunity to protect this baby, you see. And see, the reason why adults don't want to call these things what they are is because we bring our stuff into the room, those traumas, those wounds, that shame, that guilt, all of this stigma that has been placed on us. And then we place that in turn on our children and we raise them incorrectly by teaching them to disassociate themselves from their body parts too, when we need to get out of our own way, right? If we don't have the proper tools and terminology to teach them, then we need to send them to someone who does and who can, you see, because again, we create this culture of silence. We potentially put them in the harm's way for abuse. And so also, again, we create this situation where we dissociate and we put ourselves at risk. And so it's going to be very important, when we talk about sexuality, especially with young people, remember, we're talking about good touch, bad touch, proper hygiene, how to care for yourself. Like, are we having these conversations? Do we know, how to talk to these young people. And if we don't, we need to step out the way and let someone who is professional and who can talk to them in a very developmentally appropriate and medically accurate way, and let them have this conversation. And then if you are not able to have the conversation, you need to go somewhere too and sit down and talk to somebody and kind of figure out why, because it's your trauma. And your trauma is standing in your way from keeping yourself healthy and loving your temple and keeping it safer. And even when we talk about sexuality in the church, now folks are married, and the marriage bed should be undefiled. So you should be having these conversations, because when you fail to educate folks in the church too that are in married situations, yeah, we're just gonna leave it there because y'all know where I'm going with that. Okay, so we send some marriages up for failure, you see. And so we have to be able to talk about these things as they are. Call a thing, beloved. Call it what it is.
Absolutely. I think that we fail because, again, lack of knowledge. But one of the things that I think Dr. Rose really hit on is just historically how we were raised and how we were brought up. I think for many of us in the Black community, sex was always something that we just don't talk about, something we don't say. Something that we just we don't discuss. And that culture generationally has just been passed down from generations to generations, that causes us to have generational ignorance and generational destroying of opportunities for us to grow. I think we have to teach our children and teach adults about their body parts in order to be their own advocates in medical situations, to be advocates about their own life and health. We see it now in the court systems where there are laws out there that are either being for or against women to protect their own reproductive rights. And if we're not having those conversations, then we also cannot vote educational. We can't have the right decisions at the polls where it really makes a difference, not only for our generations, but the generations to come. And so courses like, let's talk about sex, HIV, and AIDS, having amazing individuals like Dr. Rose that will be there to help you and your organization and your family to really talk about and really do some things that you typically have been maybe uncomfortable with. I think it's time for us to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. I think it's time for us, as faith leaders, as pastors, as willing workers, to really have serious conversations about our health. And that includes talking about our body parts and what it really is, right? Not our nicknames, not kitty cat, not this, that, and the other, but real body parts. Come on, right? But really being honest about what we don't know. And just lastly, Dr. Tamara, you talked about marriage couples, and my husband and I do a lot of marriage counseling, right? And one of the things we talk about both before and after marriage is talking about your sexuality and talking about what it takes to make sure that you are not only pleasing one another, but that you're understanding each other's body, you're understanding each other's love language, and you're understanding, first of all, yourself. And so if we're not having these conversations and we're not seeking out professional help as well as spiritual help, then we're also lagging behind and creating generational ignorance that must be stopped. And it's got to start with a conversation.
Oh, wow. We both said a lot there. You said a lot. And I think one of the things of why we're talking about this is we don't want to talk to children. And then we don't want to talk to mom and daddy either. We don't want to talk to seniors because we think seniors are not sexually active. And so we have to realize that it's not about who you are, but about the behaviors that you engage in. And we were created sexual beings.
Correct. So
it's natural. And we want to acknowledge that it exists, but we want to have fun doing it, but we don't want to talk about it. So we have to talk about it. Now I know that we're not going to do a lot of talk about the alphabets of HIV, but just right quick, let's run through what puts you at risk. And let's talk about not only the medical reasons, but let's talk about some of the social and economic reasons, what they call those social determinants of health that put people at risk.
So HIV, human immunodeficiency virus, can only be transmitted from human to human. Not a cat, rat, dog, monkey, or mosquito can transmit this virus. It has to have a human host in order to survive and in order to be transmitted. And when we talk about immunodeficiency, we're simply talking about a breakdown in our immune system. Our immune system is made of the white blood cells. And when HIV enters the body, it attacks those white blood cells and begins to break it down and then turn it into an HIV viral particle, and then it replicates itself over and over and over, causing a deficiency or a breakdown in the immune system. Virus is something that the CDC says that once we have, we always have. There is no cure for a virus. It can only be treated. And so when we talk about the behaviors that put us at risk for HIV, we're talking about sexual activity, unprotected sexual activity with someone who is living with HIV, definitely increases your exposure to the virus. Because I'm trying to move away from, so I have to say this, because when we talk about Black women, this is very important. We know that anecdotally, Black women do not associate our sexual behaviors and choices with risk. So once we call and label these behaviors that we identify as pleasurable and sometimes necessity as a risk, we're less likely to associate ourselves with that. We're less likely to have that conversation with our doctor about our pleasures or our necessity, right? Because we're going to be real and say that some folks think that they have to have sex out of necessity to feed their children, to survive that domestic violence situation, which again are some of these social determinants that Bettina wants us to talk about when we talk about the transmission of HIV and other sexually transmitted infections. And so again, sexual activities. And then we also want to look at sharing needles. When we talk about needles of any kind, body piercing, tattooing, needles for illicit drug use, as well as prescription drug use. And when we think about the senior population, as Bettina mentioned earlier, we talked about grandma and grandpa who are now maybe living in an assisted facility and who do not have access to, income, right? So they might use sister such and such's needle down the hall, or, such and such's needle, and they're sharing these needles unaware of the risks that they may be encountering. And then also we talk about perinatal transmission, or what they like to call vertical transmission from mother to child. Usually when a woman is pregnant, of course, they give her an HIV test. And if she's found out that she has HIV, they will put her on a medical regimen of HIV medications, and that will reduce her risk down to below, I think it's 3% of having a child living with HIV. Once the baby's born, they will test the baby about 6 months after the baby is born, because the baby, when it's first born, has its mother's immunity. And so if they test the baby right then, the baby will definitely show that it's HIV positive because it still has its mother's immunity. But after about 6 months or so, once they test the baby, they will then determine whether the baby is living with HIV. But at that time, the mother still cannot breastfeed, because breast milk, I'm gonna say that again, breast milk, anything, anybody, baby or not, encountering breast milk from someone who's living with HIV has a potential of, that exposure as well. And so, yeah, those are some of the direct methods or ways that people, behaviors, activities, things that people can engage in that could potentially put them in an exposure for HIV. And then when we think about those indirect things, we're talking about like lack of income, right? If I don't have money, I might be willing to do what they say, something strange for a little piece of change, right? And then I might be willing to do it unprotected if that change, some coins are a little bit more. So I potentially put myself at risk. And then we're also looking at having money, right? Because I like the lifestyle that I'm accustomed to, and I know my partner is not necessarily the most faithful person, and they're stepping out on me, but dare I ask them to put on a condom, because they might slap me across my face, right? Because I'm suggesting that they're doing something that they're not supposed to be doing. But at the same time, I like my Tesla and I like my Porsche, and I'm not willing to give that lifestyle up, because I like looking good when I come to church on Sunday and on Wednesday for Bible study. And then we're also looking at lack of access to health care, lack of education. We're looking at lack of knowledge. And even if we do have education, do we have medical literacy, right? Do we understand the things that are going on in the medical space, right? And then we're also looking at just being Black in America. And we're looking at the historical framing of HIV as a gay white male's disease, which when it was framed that way, it excluded a lot of people who didn't look that way or who did not do those quote unquote things that those people over there did because we're not like them. But we were all actually engaged in the same type of behaviors, which was what we should have been focusing on in the first place, because that is what was putting at risk, not our sexual identities, our sexual orientations, our genders, or our gender roles, right? But those behaviors that we all as human beings engage in, you see. And so, yeah, that's what I got for that.
Did you have anything you'd like to add, Doctor?
I have nothing to add other than amen. we know that being exposed, having unprotected sex, and having the unfortunateness to be contracted with the virus can happen in many ways, as Dr. Rose just mentioned. But what it does to our society, right? What it does to a teenager, what it does to a senior citizen, and now they have to not only survive becoming a parent before they decided they wanted to, now they have to do that under the guise of being infected. And as scientists and as Dr. Rose mentioned, there is no cure for this as of yet. And yes, we serve the God of miracles, right? But should he be tested? Right? Should that be tested just because we serve the God of miracles and even medical miracles? But I think it's important for us to recognize how this particular virus and unhealthy behaviors impact our economics, impact our social status. It impacts where we go to school, what we don't have privilege to, and how it contributes to the overall broken system that we, as particularly people of color, live in every day. And when we're not having these discussions and we're not recognizing the impact that we're having by having unhealthy sexual relations, we are going to fall prey to a lot of social determinants of health, and we'll end up literally killing ourselves. We don't need to look at the white man, the red man, or any other man. We're doing it to ourselves when we're not becoming educated and utilizing the resources that are at our disposal.
You know, you mentioned something about sharing knowledge and actually having honest conversation and being able to talk about it, because there early on, when this virus was first identified, we had 2 presidents that couldn't even say the word sex. And because of that, a lot of hemophiliacs in this country died because there was no discussion on how this virus, an open admission on how this virus was transmitted.
True.
So let's talk just briefly, let's bring it on home and talk briefly about Dr. Bailey, you worked with us and the group of young people that sex experts that Dr. Tamara supervised.
Yeah.
And you worked as a mentor and helping them put together a 1-page brief that talked about the barriers and also the protective factors that are found in churches that either contribute to or protect from. Can you share a little bit of that information with us, please?
Absolutely. Probably one of the most profound initiatives that came out of Your Blessed Health, was the sex experts, and credit given to Dr. Rose and to yourself for thinking about the faith community in such a way. Working with the young people that we were able to connect with for them, it gave them a sense of pride. It gave them an opportunity to talk to their peers in ways, first and foremost, young people are talking about sex and having sex. Okay, those are just facts, right? And sometimes equipping them is probably the best way to make sure, because they're getting secondhand knowledge off the street sometime. But we were able to train individuals that are believers, the young people that are doing the plays and praise dancing and doing all of that in your churches. These experts were extremely knowledgeable because they were trained to be able to help their fellow brothers and sisters in the Lord know about their reproductive system, to know about the resources that were at their disposal. We looked at different apps, right, that they could use, since they're so in this technology wave of things, and everybody's doing this with their head down. It's amazing how we got next still, because it's just this crook over. But these experts were able to look at technology and survey different churches and be able to provide why it's important. I think they raised an awareness and gave a platform for young people to say this matters. And it took their raising their voices and this type of initiative to allow pastors like me and others to say this is important. We have to preach it from the pulpit, and then we have to live it in the street, right? And we have to give a platform and a space for young people and any person that are interested in providing educational, spiritually, health education and resources that's going to allow us to stay alive and thrive for the kingdom. And so that experience will always be something that I'll treasure. And I think that it's something that should be nationally as well as internationally replicated, right? I think when we get a chance to infuse our youth to tell educationally their truth, I think we're going to be winning every single time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rose. Did you have anything that you'd like to say?
I just wanted to say, I guess the beautiful thing about it, and Dr. Bailey said it so eloquently, is that the youth have a voice, a different voice. And we have to remember that, you know, as young as I like to think I am, I'm not young anymore. The time that I came up in is very, very different from the time that these youth are in now. They have the World Wide Web to expose them to the world of a lot of stuff. Right. And so it's so important. If you want your youth to have the information that they need to have, it's so important that you craft and script those messages for them. So talking about sex is going to have to be one. When you have different apps, different sites that they can punch into their phone and pull up, because you think that you can just I can put these adult things on the phone and these blockers on the phone. These kids are so phenomenally smart that they can bypass everything that you done put on the phone by the time you think about putting it on the phone. And so not having the conversation is really putting them in harm's way, honestly. And so giving them the tools, I mean, research and study shows that just because you talk about sex, it does not mean that they're going to be more likely. In fact, it's the exact opposite. They're going to be less likely. And should they find themselves, right, in a space where they might think about it, they have the tools and knowledge, just like you got car insurance, right? You don't plan on going out getting into no accident, do you? You don't. But guess what? Just in case you do, you have the tools in place to get your car fixed, or whatever the case may be. And so think of it as a sort of insurance. You're protecting your kid from something that they may be potentially exposed to. And they will be, because of the World Wide Web. Like when I was growing up, like I said, we had television, and that's as far as it went. Again, these kids have so much knowledge. Let me say it to you this way. When I was teaching fourth grade health education, sex education specifically in Flint, Michigan, I had fourth graders asking me about things that their parents had no knowledge that they knew. They were asking me about gender reassignment surgeries. They were asking me about abortions. They were asking me about having sex, caught some kids having sex. So let me tell, and so when the parents came up to me to get me together, I had to show them the questions that their kids were asking me and educate them on how to talk to their kids, because their kids were in harm's way because they were afraid to have these conversations. And so just because you don't have the conversation, it does not mean that it's not going to happen. So give them the information that you need to have. And the beautiful thing that we had about that we did when we were working with the churches, it was, I think, 6 or 7 pastors across different denominations that we worked together with this policy brief and the youth. And these youth sat down and they talked to it wasn't an easy conversation at first, I don't think, because they were youth, because there were pastors, but it took place in the it was at Pastor Bailey's
yes.
Church. And we sat there and we toughed it out. We had a tough conversation about sex, and we came up with these briefs and these talking points for pastors to be able to talk to youth, and why youth thought it was necessary for pastors to be able to have this information, and how they could make that space more inclusive and more safe for the youth to come and talk to them. And so over a series of time, they made this, I wish I could find that brief. They made this amazing, like 1-page document that was submitted to like a lot of the different churches. And so it was a very helpful tool. And a really very interesting process.
No, it really was. And one thing I forgot to mention was, and you brought my mind to it, was it broke down a lot of barriers between youth and the pastor, right? It broke down a lot of stigmas from both sides of the aisle. Pastors were able to really lean in and listen to the youth, not just in their church, but youth, period. Youth were able to see from a pastoral perspective why they had barriers or why they had a level of position on certain items. But it resulted in a lot of those churches that participated in bringing in health workers and acknowledging it and upholding ministries and starting ministries around sexual health that really allowed, I believe, their church to blossom. And for any pastor, for real, we want people to be not only saved, but we want them to do well. And oftentimes we can turn them away with our barriers and with our rules, right? But if we show them consistently that we not only care about their spiritual health, we just care about them, period, right? Then they begin to bring their children, and their children feel like there's a connection that they can have with their spiritual leaders that goes beyond a Sunday and a Wednesday, that goes beyond just what they do and what's been told in the Bible. And so it was an amazing brief. It was an amazing project and initiative that, like I said again, that should continue throughout internationally, because it did so much for the churches that were involved.
Well, again, we thank you for sharing this information with us tonight. If you have questions, I think we have a space and time where you would be able to ask those questions and get some answers. Also, so I'm just going to say thank you. It's been awesome talking with you ladies, and I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Miner now.
Thank you.
All right. Wow. Okay, great. I've been taking a look at across the social media. We have some questions that come up that we're doing the Q&A sections. You all did a magnificent job. Duke and I are working on getting those together for our Q&A section. All right, and again, thank everybody that are also watching us on our social media. Again, feel free to share, post questions. We are now able to check all of our pages at one time. So you put those questions in, we're going to do our dead level best to capture that. All right, now you know what time it is. Woohoo! It is time for us to go to Sister Nettie. Yes, it's time for us to go to Sister Nettie. And you know, because Sister Nettie, what time it is. All right.
Let's move.
Let's move. So Sister Nettie, we go to you now so you can give us let's move. But you know what I need to do first? I got so excited. Sister Nettie, I get so excited about going to you first because you give away something. I want to make sure National Baptist get the giveaway. But I gotta say something about our sponsor, our major collaborator. We want to remind everyone that's watching about our collaboration with NIH's All of Us research program. Our community isn't just unique in culture and tradition, but also in our health needs. Participating in the All of Us research program is a step towards making sure health research considers all our needs. So visit joinallofus.org/NBCUSA now, today, tonight, to enroll in the program and help make research more inclusive. We also remind everybody December is also National Drunk and Drug Driving 3D Prevention Month. We direct you to email us at info@hopenbc.com, info@hopenbc.com for links to helpful resources for your church's observation. Each December, let's be honest, many of us, even in our congregations, go out and have fun, parties and drink with family and friends. But we ask everyone that's doing that to stop and think for a second about being responsible. December is National Drunk and Drug Driving Prevention Month, and since the holiday season has a higher accident rate than others on average, it is important to echo the message of consciousness of being in a proper state of mind behind the wheel. Check this out. According to the National Safety Council, over 40,000 people, yes, 40,000 people died in alcohol-related traffic accidents last year. So this year, stay safe during the holidays. Remember, the life you save might be mine. All right, now it's time for our monthly Let's Move National Baptist Update. So you know what that means. We'll hear from our NBCUA movement guru, Sister Nettie Johnson. She will share updates about Let's Move National Baptist and conduct our December drawing. Sister Nettie, it's in your hands.
Good evening, good evening. And way to make that announcement about the driving and the life being saved, making it personal. That's right. We need to make these things personal and relatable. First, let me just reiterate the wow, 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 wow that Dr. Miner came in to Sister Campbell, all of you, Dr. Rose, Mr. Bailey, phenomenal job, phenomenal job. And I am just so thankful to just, Dr. Miner, I'm thankful for these webinars because consistently you're lifting topics that truly are about saving our lives. And the topics that these women discussed today, truly, you know, suffering, it flourishes in silence. So thank you for your voices. I'm just excited. But let me talk about this movement stuff. We are also excited as we are in the last month of the year. Once we kind of get into the holidays, what usually happens? Some of our lifestyle behaviors that are actual acts of stewardship, sometimes they kind of start to slip and slide because we get into holiday mode, and in our minds, we say we will start again in the new year. It switches from Monday until the new year. But we just thank God that this past month, y'all, listen to this. We have had the largest number of reportings where people recording their actual movement that we have had all year. So Thanksgiving did not stop that show. And we continue to have new people joining. And here's the part that really excites me. Of those that are reporting, they reported increases on average in the amount of movement. We are now up to a point where those that are reporting are moving 70% of the day. So that means that every month we're moving more days than we're not moving. Folks are reporting, you know, ability to do things, even things like touching their toes, just lifestyle, functional movement, and the enjoyment of taking care of our temples through movement. It is such a blessing. So congratulations, praise God, and bravo to all of you that are part of the program and that are moving for your health. Just very quickly, we have a couple of announcements about things that are coming up this upcoming month. We will have another open hour. This is an opportunity to just come on and we just talk about whatever y'all want to talk about, challenges, celebrations, questions that we have, so that we can support one another in community around our movement. This next open hour will be held this time next Tuesday. So we're going to start at 7:00 p.m. The 13th of December, and it will be on Zoom. If you're on our email list, you have the information. If you don't have the information, get on our email list. Go to letsmovenbc.com so that you can have it. And then we are sending out a gift to everyone, again, that is signed up. All program participants will get TempleCare 12, which is a 12-day series starting on December 12th through Christmas Eve, the 12th through the 24th, where each day you will get just a gentle reminder to do something, mind, body, soul wellness, to nurture ourselves so that we can stay well in mind, body, and soul as we go into this busy season leading up until the celebration of the birth of Christ. So look for that gift coming in your email box every day, starting on the 12th for TempleCare 12. And the last thing that I want to kind of just lift as we get ready to roll into the new year is we want to have this year's final $100 Let's Move National Baptist gift card winner. And I saw that the person who was selected was on the call earlier, and I hope that they are still on. This month's winner is Peggy Nichols. Peggy Nichols, are you still on? $100 for you. Are we there? Is it possible to hear from the winner?
Yes, she's here.
Yes, praise the Lord. I'm here. I'm trying to say here and type it in the chat, but yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh my God, praise the Lord. Oh my God. I'm so excited. God bless you.
Well, how is your movement going, Sister Nichols?
It's just wonderful. I have adopted a 30-day challenge with Leslie Sansone walk tape. We're working every day on a portion of our body. One day we'll do our weights. The next day is cardio, and it's a 30-day challenge. So I'm just into the movement. I just bless God for the support.
Who's your church and pastor?
Praise the Lord. My church is the historical New Bethel Baptist Church, where the Reverend Robert Smith Jr. is our senior pastor, and our illustrious First Lady is Dr. Cynthia Smith. She is the president of the Women's Auxiliary for the National Baptist Convention, and they are very supportive of weight management in the scripture to present your bodies as living sacrifices. Praise the Lord.
Amen.
Just
All right. So
glad to be a part of the movement.
in the great city of Detroit, also known as Mississippi North, right?
Right, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And of course, Sister Nettie, you do have our mailing information, everything. Address.
All of that information, we're going to email it to you as soon as I get off of this call.
All
Congratulations.
right.
Yes, well, thank you. I look forward to it. God bless you. Thank you for this wonderful incentive.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sister Nichols.
God bless you. Thank you.
Everybody, and back over to you. Keep moving, stay well. God bless you.
All right, boy, get excited. We have a giveaway. Thank you, Sister Nettie. I love it. Who says the National Baptists always ask? See, we give some things too. Wow. Woo! We have covered a whole lot this evening, but the best part is coming now. We want to hear from you. You may type in the chat or raise your virtual hand. Duke is compiling questions now. For those watching on social media, we'll do our best to capture your question as well. We can once again want to thank our collaborator, our major funder, the National Institutes of Health, all of us research program for being so supportive of all our efforts. Now, look, before we go into Q&A, let's not forget our December marketing updates. World AIDS Day was on December 1st. National Drunk and Drug Driving Prevention. National Influenza Vaccination Week this week. Get your shot, your flu shot. You may download the complete list of annual health services from our website, which is at hopenbc.com. And you also can find additional information and resources on our webpage, hopenbc.com. Now, we do have a big upcoming event, our member of the board meeting in Birmingham, January 9th through 12th, 2023. Just before that, on January 3rd, we're going to kick off the year with our first TempleCare Matters webinar. And we're going to talk about Let's Move National Baptist, New Year's health resolutions. Wow. This year, I'm going to do something. Wow. It's going to be interesting to see how Sister Nettie asks with that. Okay. We're going to talk about National Volunteer Blood Donor Month, Cervical Health Awareness Month, and of course, we're going to provide an overview of the 2023 NBCUSA Hope regional meetings. Okay, you can join us on our on social media, Facebook, National Baptist Convention USA Incorporated Hope Health Initiative, on Twitter, Hope_NBCUSA, on YouTube, NBCUSA Hope. And if you'd like to enroll in any of our training, you can email info@hopenbc.com or call 901-603-0762, 901-603-0762. We would appreciate your feedback. Would you kindly complete our webinar survey? We're going to paste a link in the chat so that you can go ahead, as my late godfather reminded me, the biggest room there is the room for improvement. So Duke will type our link into our webinar survey for you. All right, so let's open up for questions. Okay, and so we'll bring our panelists and everybody up here, and we'll begin with the questions. All right, Duke, I'll let you share any questions that we have, because we're looking across different things. So Duke, what do we have so far for questions?
I'm checking now.
All right, check your text on your phone as well. We want to get all of them in. And of course, we got anything more in our online, we'll do that too, as well. Okay, I have one that come over here, Duke, while you pulling those up from social media. Okay. All right. Okay. The next question, where can a person get tested for HIV?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you for that. So it's beautiful that you asked that question, because a lot of times people think when they go to their physician to get tested, like to do a physical or complete blood work, that they're actually getting tested for HIV, and that's not necessarily the case. You have to specifically ask for an HIV test, and you can get one if you have a private physician at your physician. You can also go to what they call an AIDS service organization. So you can do a Google search for an AIDS service organization in your community, and it may come across as like a nonprofit organization that's offering free testing and counseling services. You can also probably go to your local health department to get tested for HIV. They do, make these home test kits, but I kind of gently and lovingly nudge folk away from those tests, because you don't have the support system in place that you should have when you do a testing and counseling session with a certified test counselor. Usually the procedure is, when you go to get tested, they should give you a series of questions that will determine your quote unquote risk, whatever that is. And they will ask you these questions, and then they will put you through a series of counseling and then give you the test. Usually, the great thing about testing now is that it's a 1-minute testing process. So, and they also have mobile units. Back when, I first began testing, you used to have to wait like 2 weeks to get your results. Your whole life would pass through. In those 2 weeks, everything you did or did not do would pass through your mind and torture you. But now it's a 1-minute process. They prick your finger, drop some on a blood into a vial, and then they shake it up, and there you go, you have your results. But then they also give you some post-counseling right after your results to help you keep yourself safer, right? To reduce your potential exposure. And your results can come back either reactive, which means they did at that time find a presence of HIV in your blood, or non-reactive, which means they did not, or something called indeterminate, which means something else is going on in your body. You might have another autoimmune syndrome that cannot be determined between that test. But here's the thing, if your test does come back reactive, they still have to send it out for further testing to do a confirmatory test on the initial pre-test that you took at a organization. So just keep that in mind. And this is why we say don't do a home test, because if you don't have this information, you could be potentially overreacting. And then there's something called a window period. And that's the time of infection to detection. At the time a person is first infected with HIV until enough HIV antibodies have built up in a person's blood to be detected on an HIV antibody test. Y'all, it's not an AIDS test, okay? It's an HIV antibody test. And that's about 14 days on average, 2 to 2 weeks for most individuals, but sometimes it can take up to 6 months. So that means if I put myself in a position to potentially be exposed to HIV right now in this moment, it's not going to show up tomorrow if I run to the doctor and say, hey, I need to take a test. It's going to take at least 14 days from that exposure, which means that I still can't, like if I go out and do something again the next day, it's still going to be another 14 days. And so that's called the window period, or actually, I think they call that now the initial onset. And so this is the type of information that a person has to know. And if you don't know that type of information, you do a home test and now, it came up non-reactive or negative, I'm good. No, you may not be good, right? And now you're potentially passing the virus along to somebody else. So those are some places that you can go to: your doctor, your health department, or an AIDS service organization, a community-based organization that services sexual health.
Okay, another question we just came in. So it's still the perception in the Black faith community that HIV/AIDS is primarily a disease that affects people that are gay, heterosexual, not the heterosexual population. Can you give us an idea about the percentage? And I don't know if you have it or not. In the Black community, this was coming, I think if I got this question right, in the Black community, are there a number of heterosexual, do we have any breakdown between that may be helpful because again, still that perception that it's just, gay people that have it. So do you have those numbers to share with us that may be helpful as we continue to educate folks about this?
Well, I don't have specific numbers, but I do have an ability to knock down that stereotype because it's not true. It is not a gay person's disease. In fact, more non-gays actually contract the virus than gays in the Black community often. And so I think really understanding that it is about protecting yourself, regardless of your sexual preference or your sexual identity. And I think it's very important for us to kind of debunk that stereotype that it is a gay person's disease. And again, when it came out back in the 80s, and we're now in 2022, you can tell how just that falsehood continues to keep us divided and destroying us for real, true knowledge. I don't have statistics, but I do know at the same rate that a person that is gay is even more the same rate as someone that is considered heterosexual. And so I think it's about us spreading the right knowledge and the truth that it is not a gay disease or straight disease. It's a disease. And if you're not protecting yourself, you are making yourself susceptible and exposed to dangerous practices that you might be able to encounter that virus.
And can I just let me come on in on this one?
Yes.
Y'all, listen, let me just say this. There are more folk who look like me, who are the same gender, a woman like me, that are infected with HIV, that are living with HIV. And let me just say this, can we walk away from this webinar, if no other webinar, to understand that it is not, like Dr. Bailey said, your sexual orientation, who you love, but how you love. And when I'm talking about how you love, it's those behaviors that all of us as humans engage in. Anal, oral, or vaginal sex puts a person at risk, and that does not determine your orientation or who you love, you see. Now, if you are sharing a needle with somebody, that's gonna put you at risk too, and that's not determined about your orientation either. So can we walk away from, if we don't do nothing else, can we please walk away from this webinar knowing that it is behaviors, human behaviors. Human behaviors. And those of us humans that reside in the African American community are the ones that are more at risk, you see. Okay.
Right. And we have been getting feedback in about the 12 years that we've been having the Hope Health Ministry. I've had people across the nation from different health ministry churches who've asked these particular questions. So we know for National Baptists, for any of the Black faith community, we are skeptical about approaching these subjects, but I do ask all of our churches to find some way to have these discussions. I know it's an everybody disease; it's not just a somebody disease. All right, yes. So Duke, do we have any other those other questions pop up from that we received?
Is there a cure or vaccine for HIV?
No, unfortunately, no.
Okay. Well, I think they probably came back and they figured that whatchamacall got it. Seeing Magic Johnson. Yeah. So, Magic Johnson walking around looking all healthy and stuff. So they figured, some way, somehow. Okay.
And there have been some 2 or 3 individuals that have, they say, that have been treated and going through certain processes that everybody does not have access to and won't have access to for years to come, if ever, that are cured. But overall, there is no cure. So that's why we stress so hard for you to know what the behaviors are that you engage in that put you in harm's way for potential exposure. And then know your status. Everybody needs to go and get tested and know their status. And then once you know that status, then learn the ways, as Dr. Tamara said, if you go to a test counselor at the health department or nonprofit Planned Parenthood, they are going to walk you through the steps that will help to keep you safer. And then you identify your own plan and then work that plan, people. Because yes, there's treatment, but that treatment can be so cruel.
Okay. All right. Duke, any other questions?
Okay, let me explain something when I say so cruel. It's just like any other medicine that you take. There are so many different side effects. And because you don't know what side effects, what things that you may be allergic to that's in that medication. And so you need to just do what you can to stay non-HIV positive, HIV negative, okay?
All right. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Duke, any other questions?
I have what are common symptoms of HIV?
The common symptoms of HIV, there's no common. I mean, I just want to really say, like, there's no common symptoms, right? People like to say that when a person is first infected with HIV, they may have flu-like symptoms, but I try to say, unless a person knows for sure that they've been infected, a lot of times people miss those flu-like symptoms because we're in flu season, right? So and every other pretty much condition out here has flu-like symptoms, right? And so, and that's what is often said when a person is first infected, they may experience flu-like symptoms. And then the symptoms, quote unquote, can vary depending on what stage, because HIV progresses in stages. And so when we think about Magic Johnson, we have to understand the transmission, the life cycle of HIV and how it works in the body, right? He is more along what they like to call the advanced state, or the asymptomatic state, where he is not experiencing all the symptoms that a person will experience in terms of living with HIV. But yet, once you have the diagnosis of having AIDS, you will always have AIDS. And then again, when we think about a Magic Johnson, we also have to think about those social determinants that Bettina talked about. He was being treated by the man who discovered, if you will, HIV, right? As well as he had the ability financially to get the medications that he needed to be able to get to treat the disease. And then we were looking at the fact that he was athletic, like all of these things. How HIV will impact everybody will be individual. So to say there's a specific set of symptoms that a person will have, it's going to depend on a lot of things. How healthy is this person? Are they taking their medications consistently? Are they active in terms of, getting up and moving? What is their nutrition like, their diet like? So all of these things will determine how HIV plays out in a person's body. But what I will say, in order for a person to receive a diagnosis, y'all, because folks don't get AIDS, they don't take an AIDS test, they get an AIDS diagnosis based on a specific criteria that is only given to them by a doctor, and that is when their white blood cell count falls below 200, because we talked about that's what HIV targets when it enters the body. And if they get what they call an AIDS defining condition, or what they used to call an opportunistic infection, which is an illness that takes an opportunity to impact a person's immune system because they are living with HIV. So two things: they have to have a white blood cell count below 200 plus an AIDS defining condition in order to be given a diagnosis of AIDS. So once a person has that diagnosis, they will always have that diagnosis, even if they clear the opportunistic infection, and even when their blood cell count comes back, white blood cell count comes back above 200.
All right. Well, look, we are at time. And actually, that was all our questions. But again, thank you, Dr. Bailey, Dr. Rose. Thank you, Sister Bettina, for moderating this and everything. Sister Bettina, well, any quick updates on our mental health first aid?
Yes, we now have identified one of our team members that will be trained in first part of the year. And so probably by end of February, 1st of March, we should be offering classes again.
Okay, we'll have further update in January. That sounds wonderful. All right. Well, this concludes our Q&A section. We want to take time out to appreciate the tireless work of our NBCUSA Hope team. Yours truly, Dr. Michael Miner, Dr. Desi Levy, Sister Lottie Miner, Sister Bettina Campbell, Pastor Dexter Moraney, Sister Ellen McKnight, Dr. Felisa Washington, Minister Geraldine Moore, Sister Loretta Miller, Dr. Lavora Williams, Sister Nettie Johnson, Dr. Marion Talley, and of course, who keeps us all lined up and everything for what we're doing technology, Brother Thomas Duke Robinson. We are thankful for our 7 regional coordinators. For the Northeast, Pastor Daniel Blackburn. The Southeast, Sister Brooklyn Rogers. The Southwest 1, Pastor Bernard Montgomery. Southwest 2, Sister Linda Copper. Midwest, Sister Teresa Fells Farr. For the West, Sister Norma Jackson. For the Far West, Pastor Richmond Johnson. If you want to connect with your regional coordinator, you can email us at info@hopenbc.com. We know that some of you have additional questions or comments, so we'll formally close today's session in just a moment. We'll then open the mics for those on Zoom for a general Q&A session. We hope to see you all on Tuesday, January 3rd, 2023 for our next TempleCare Matters webinar. Wish everyone a Merry, blessed Christmas and Happy New Year 2023. Once again, we acknowledge our president, Dr. Jerry Young, who reminds us to envision the future exceptionally. With our over 31,000 churches all across the country and across the world, this has been a production of the National Baptist Convention USA Incorporated, the nation's largest Black denomination. God bless and God keep you is our prayer.